Good. All right. Good evening, directors, staff, and members of the public joining us on Zoom because we don't have anyone here in person. I will now call this April 24th, 2025 regular business meeting of the Twin Cities German Immersion School Board to order. Let's start by reflecting on our mission, vision, and values. The mission of the Twin Cities German Immersion School is the innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is under Hören, under Sein, Weltoffen Denken und Handeln, educating multilingual world citizens who hear others, see others, and think and act with an open mind. Our values are curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, intercultural engagement, and community. At the start of each board meeting, we also take a moment to read our TCGIS land acknowledgement, which is as follows. We acknowledge and appreciate that TCGIS is located on Whakapute Dakota traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland near Lake Minnewaca in land now known as Minnesota Makoche. Our presence here is linked to generations of Whakapute stewardship over their land, as well as to the historical and ongoing injustices of settler colonization that impact Indigenous people to the present day. We are committed to understanding our role in this legacy and to educating ourselves and our community about Indigenous history through continued mindfulness and engagement in and outside the classroom. Perfect timing. Aberhart, will you please call the roll for the record?
Sure. Director Albers.
Here.
Director Hyde.
Here.
Director Larson.
Here.
Director Lindner.
Here.
Director Reich.
Here.
Director Smaka.
Here.
Director Tesfayesus.
Here.
And Director Yamana is absent. An ex officio board member, Executive Director Zimfanik.
Here. Excellent. We have a quorum. I just wanted to start the meeting tonight. I know there's not a ton of people online, but sometimes folks rewatch, just with some opening remarks to thank everyone for their involvement in our spring campaign, which is focused on kindness, which is one of our school's values, and generosity. I just want to thank everyone who has participated, and a big thank you to our teachers and staff for encouraging our students to participate and catching them being kind with some stickers. To our parents for taking the 10 minutes out of their jam-packed days and busy nights to help their kids sign up and pick acts of kindness. To our school supporters who have generously donated to help us get within, I think we're like $3,000 from reaching our $85,000 fundraising goal to support programs that are unique to our immersion school. And most of all, a huge thank you to our students who are making good on their pledges to share acts of kindness in a world that so desperately needs more. One of the things I love about this campaign is that it builds on one of my favorite slogans, that if everybody does a little, nobody does a lot. And when everybody pitches in, we can accomplish quite a bit for our community. And as a mid-sized charter school, community engagement is critical to our long-term health. We need our community to pitch in where they can and when they can. So tonight, I want to both thank our community for everything that you do and have done throughout the year, and also challenge folks that haven't yet raised their hands to get involved, or maybe find a way to be involved in a new way. Maybe you've been meaning to volunteer with the PTO, or you're a family that has been thinking about hosting an intern but hasn't hit the submit button on their application yet. Or you're not sure if you should throw your name in the hat for the board because your skills aren't maybe a perfect set or perfect fit. But if those are the things holding you back, I just encourage you to take a leap of faith and dive in, because our school needs all of us doing a little so that nobody has to do a lot, and that we can continue to be the strong, healthy, growing school that we are. So when we raise our hands, everybody wins. And I just like to invite everybody to do that, or think of a new way to jump in and support our school, because I know you'll be glad that you did. We're going to be talking about some of those ways tonight, and I hope and invite everyone to find a way to plug in that works for them. So with that, we'll move on to our agenda for the evening. The first order of business tonight is to approve our March meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve March's minutes, please?
So approved. Or
Okay.
so
moved.
so moved.
Thank you, Director Hyde. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Director Lindner. Any discussion on March's minutes? All right, hearing none, the March minutes are approved. Our next order of business tonight is a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda. I will make that motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Albers. Any amendments tonight to our agenda? I will make one. I would like to add a agenda item to discuss strategies to recruit new board members, given the lack of applications that we have received this year. So I would move to add that agenda item after our athletics update before our Q3 report about the to the authorizer. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, all those in favor of my proposed amendment, say aye.
Hey.
Those opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Kevin, can you please add that to the notes? Thanks. That brings us to open forum. The school board recognizes the value of participation by the public in deliberations and decisions on the school district's matters. To maintain orderly and efficient proceedings, the board provides a specified time period in all regular meetings during which members of the public attending in person may address the school board. We do not have anyone here tonight. So I will open and then close our open forum. All right. And that always brings us to one of my favorite times on our agenda, which is our monthly community recognition. And I didn't sign everyone assignments beforehand, so I'm just gonna popcorn tonight. We're gonna be a little crazy.
Popcorn every night.
I popcorn the 3 slides that we had. So since everyone here is in that picture, I'm gonna, oh, sorry, Wandi, except for poor Wandi.
Still maybe.
You should do this.
Yeah, Wandi.
He had a lot of fun.
Just kidding. Director Smaka, would you mind giving a shout out to Basketball?
Yeah, all of us except for Wandi were at basketball, and it's a really good time. I know personally.
We say that because we missed you.
We missed you. Personally, it's one of the highlights for me of the school year at TCGIS. I've always loved it since my littles were little. And I know it takes a ton of work to put that on. The new venue was really fun and yeah, just really well put together. So thank you to Erin, Courtney, Candace, Ivanka, Jane, Monica, and Jessie. You really threw a fun and successful night.
And it was a great theme.
Great theme.
To boot.
Yes.
One of my favorites, I think.
It was a good one.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was a good one.
I don't see Jens in that picture either.
Oh, he can't tell because of his.
Oh, you do.
Excellent. All right. Speaking of Jens, Director Linder, would you give our curriculum advisory committee members a shout out?
Sure. So we would like to thank the following members for the activity in the Curriculum Advisory Committee. I know curriculum is always in need of people to drive it forward and make it better. So we want to thank Esther Neu, Elizabeth Steenfenig, Nina Maslowski, Emily Albers, Ebna Imania, Christine Chitambar, Danny Nicholson, Linda Jean Günin, Jackie Boyd, Aisha Goodman, and Nicole Illich.
Thank you to everyone who contributed their time to the Curriculum Advisory Board. And I think is that our, oh, we have one more. Awesome. Who's got an 8th grader? Director Tesfa Yusuf. Do you want to give a shout out to our capstone committee members?
Yes. So we'd like to thank the capstone committee members for all their efforts to help realize the capstone trip. There's a lot of effort put into it. And I know this because despite whatever we do, we're still behind on a lot of things. So it's an indicator that there's so much to go. But really, I think these are sincere efforts by Sarah Wilkinson, Lindell Pratt, Jennifer Roos, to make this happen for the 8th graders. So thank you.
And what's the countdown? Till they head out?
T minus,
T minus
I think 20 days, maybe.
20 days.
3 weeks from yesterday.
Yeah.
Wow,
3 weeks
so
from
20
yesterday.
days.
so exciting. Excellent. Well, thank you all to who are recognized tonight, and to everyone in our community who contributes to all the many things that we have going on. So we're grateful for your involvement. And with that, I am going to move to another form of recognition, which is our, it's really gas.
It does, but I think that's when that heat turns on,
Oh,
so we're gonna
okay.
keep an eye on it.
Sorry,
I just smell it too.
got like a whiff of natural gas.
Yeah,
Okay.
same.
Anyways, one of the things that the board did last year was we established a award recognizing an outstanding volunteer of the year. And our commitment was to have an application that is available to the community every year to submit the names of folks who have really made a difference in our community through their servant leadership. As we open the meeting with, community engagement is paramount to the success of our school. And so we really want to take the time to thank and recognize those people that give so much of themselves and their time and their talents to helping make TCGIS the place that it is. So with that, I just want to make the public aware that award nomination process will be beginning next week with a post in the Rune Brief, and to encourage folks to submit names of those individuals that they've worked with or that they've witnessed really giving back to our community and living out our community's values. Like I said, it's a critical part of our school for our students, for our families, for our school, for our teachers and staff. So just encourage everybody to take a moment to think about those people that are really making a difference and helping to lead the way by sharing their time and talents with our school. And that is my announcement of that.
How do you want those names?
I will create a Google form that will be submitted, and then the board will review them and announce those winners in June with an award. So, excellent. I think I'm also next. Kevin, would you mind bringing up that PowerPoint?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Google Slides. Cool. You want me to reshare it with you? You got it?
You did share it with me. I just have to find it quick.
Reshared it.
You share it again?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, got it.
Perfect. I just wanted to provide this full group as well as the community with an update on our strategic planning process and kind of where we stand and what is going to be happening in the next couple weeks, because that process is very close to being underway, or it really is underway. So I just wanted to give a quick, you can go to the next slide, Kevin. Quick update on the current strategic plan, kind of our plans for the next 5-year strategic plan, the process, and then just give it a chance for everybody to ask any questions, just if there's any final clarifications that need to happen. Go to the next slide. So just a reminder, our current plan is called the Revision 2025. I know many of us worked last year to update some of the key plan milestones. The first year of milestones began in school year 2021, right in the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that definitely put a little bit of a road bump in our strategic plan. But the 4 areas of primary focus within the Revision 2025 plan are innovative teaching and learning, school culture and engagement, diversity and belonging, and financial sustainability. Within each of those buckets of focus, there have been milestones that have been tracked along the way. And like I said, there were some significant kind of adjustments to those milestones because of the disruption caused by COVID. We did approve those revised milestones last June. But upon a little bit further review and with Director Zangenink coming on board, it was determined that we probably needed to undergo a revision of or a launch of our next strategic plan a year earlier. So can you go to the next one? Yep. So as we all know, we took some time to interview some various planning partners, and we have landed on working with MISBA to help us really execute a strong strategic plan that can guide our school leaders with a real focus on involving internal and external stakeholders to inform the plan. We want to make sure that it is aligned with the current needs and future aspirations of our school, and that everybody feels like they have ownership and buy-in in that plan. We want to create a strong public-facing version of the plan that everybody can access. So that's really where that one-page strategic plan comes in. We want folks to use this as a guide and to create a way to focus our efforts so that we can all be working on the agreed upon objectives as a school community. Again, really our goals in this next strategic plan are to create a clear focus, thoughtful alignment, and strong ownership of annual milestones that are jointly held between board, administration, and staff. And go to the next one. Thanks. As I mentioned, and you all know that we've engaged with the Minnesota Association of School Boards as a strategic planning partner, and we're working closely with Gail Gilman. Elizabeth and I meet with Gail or email with Gail on a somewhat fairly regular basis, and things are well underway to help us launch those efforts. Those efforts will kick off on May 7th with a listening session for internal and external stakeholders. There will be 4. You can go to the next slide, Kevin. There'll be 1 for staff members, 1 for board members, community members, as well as an administration team listening session and student listening session. And those will be held over May 7th and May 8th. From there, the work will kick to a strategic planning committee, which is made up of internal and external stakeholders that we will be inviting to be a part of that working group. And they will meet 3 times for 2 hours each session to really dive into creating the nuts and bolts of the plan based on the kind of behind the scenes work that Gail's team will do to kind of gather all the feedback, evaluate it, and kind of summarize key findings and takeaways that the committee can work off of. And from there, in August, at the committee of the whole meeting with the board, a full strategic plan review will happen, as well as kind of a board self-evaluation and how the board will be executing that plan with the intention that it will be voted on at the August meeting and adopted for the 2025-2026 school year. One step that I did not include in that May 7th and 8th piece is that just prior to that meeting, we will also send out a community-wide survey to all parents as well as internal stakeholders of staff to complete an online survey, sharing their opinions about kind of where we are and where they want to see our school going. So everyone will have the opportunity to be involved, and I would strongly encourage all of us to encourage those in our networks to take it seriously and to participate, because it's a stronger plan when many voices are a part of making it. So I think that's my overview.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I was chatting with a colleague who used the same process for another area charter school. And his just wanted to see, like, can we really get it done in this timeline that Gail has said? And he said, yes, and so I think we are definitely going to be able to present something to our community in August, but I don't think it's going to be able to be every milestone for all 5 years. And so just like setting the expectation that one pager, that focus, that's here's what our community is seeing as the need, that will for sure be able to be set. We'll need milestones for Q1 for sure to work through. And I think a goal for me then for the whole year is probably to fill out the rest of it.
Yep. And I would also be curious, as I know Gail's, one of the things she does is kind of a check-in partway through the plan. I'd also, as part of this process, be curious as to what her guidelines are with how far out specific milestones should be, because I do feel like there has to be some flexibility to respond to just environmental factors or what's going on within the school. So
consensus around 3 or 5 years at the max meetings was 5, though. I did a little pulse check to see. I was surprised by that too.
Yeah. Excellent. You can go to the final slide. Any other questions or comments, clarification that anybody feels like they need?
Did you determine if the listening sessions in June are virtual or in person?
The answer is they could be either.
Okay.
We felt it would be beneficial to our community to encourage people to attend in person.
Okay.
So that is how it has been shared out in communications with the community and in the room brief. We do have an RSVP form that has been submitted that asks folks to make it a priority to be there in person, but we also will offer a virtual option if folks cannot be in attendance. So I think the strategic planning committee is the same, has the same flexibility. I would be open to ideas, but I do feel like there is energy and synergy that happens when we can take the time to be together and work together. But again, if folks can't make it, but they're willing to share their time, we also want to, honor that and make sure that they're still able to participate. So that's kind of what we're going with at this point in time.
Okay.
Gail's open to any. She's done it all ways. All have been successful, and I am super impressed that she can finagle a hybrid meeting with that many people, because I think it's a hard thing to do. But
we did move the student one to the 8th. I know that was discussion about whether we would keep it on May 7th with that turning into a PD day. And we just decided to move it to the 8th. I'll be in the room with the kiddos. We could get more kids there, 5th graders, things like that. So they'll do theirs on the 8th.
Final comments? Questions? All right. That brings us to our next agenda item, which is the presentation on the special education audit. And Special Education Director Tammy Stoll is joining us for this.
Tammy, are you there?
I am. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Tammy. Tammy is our special education director. We contract with her, and she is the one who is providing strategic oversight to our special education program. Tammy and I meet weekly, sometimes daily, depending on what's going on. And at the very beginning of this semester, we started talking about how we could assess where our program was at. And this audit was suggested as a really great way to sort of take stock of where we're at. I've been at the school for 5 years. Tammy has been the director, official director on record for, I believe, the last 3 years, 2.5 maybe.
Off and on, I did some mentoring support and there's been some transition. So off and on for about 3 years with the school.
So we've both seen, quite a bit of what the last 5 years have looked like. We've seen contracted assistant directors. We've seen no assistant director. We've seen different configurations of a team. And so this was a great adventure to go into with Tammy. TCJS received a 20+ page document sort of detailing the results of the audit, and information was gathered from parents, administrators, students, paraprofessionals, 16 gen ed teachers, and then 8 special education teachers. And then we met Tammy and the auditor, and I talked through that whole 20 pages, looked at data, looked at trends, and then Tammy and I compiled sort of a key findings, and that's what we are going to share out today. So Kevin, if you can go to the director's report and then meet me on page 21. Obviously, 20 pages is a lot of information, and so I've tried to scale it down. And as per direction from Director Reich, I've tried to put this in pretty layman terms. So Tammy is here to support and ask questions. If we're going to do layman terms, it's really better if I talk. And so here we go. If you have questions, feel free to hands up and stop me as we're going through the slides. Otherwise, there is time for questions at the end. Page 21. Okay, the audit was sectioned into 6 different categories. The next slide, yeah, thank you. Oh. My bad, Kevin. Yeah, thanks. The first section is compliance and due process. And this is the part that I think it's not a coincidence that this is first and foremost, because we are not going to be the school that doesn't follow IEPs. IEPs, due process, all those things are the law. And so this is checking to see whether TCJS is following the law. So we have, from the findings, strong compliance with special education requirements. Parents report feeling included in IEP meetings and decision-making, and the required compliance documents such as the TSIS manual, restrictive procedures, which I referenced today, and the procurement process are in place. Procurement process, because we're using federal funds, we need to make sure that we are not using federal funds for anything that's not for special education, that we are cataloging our furniture, that we are labeling our iPads, and all those things need to be done properly. And the audit showed that we were doing those things. I was going to say something about the process. No, I lost it. Okay, next slide, please. The next one is student outcomes, which makes sense because this is all about student outcomes. According to the audit, special education students are performing above the state average in reading proficiency, which coincides with the rest of our school. General education teachers are generally aware of whom to consult for student progress concerns, and progress monitoring is occurring but requires greater consistency across all settings. As far as how students are doing, there needs to be more communication, both with parents and then also across gen ed and SPED. The next category was equity and access. Strong inclusion efforts with most students served in the least restrictive environment. If you've heard me talk about education before, there are different settings, different levels of service that students receive, and the lowest level of service or the least restrictive environment is federal setting 1, which means students are for the most part in the general education classroom. And we do have a strong number of students receiving the lowest level. We have a fair amount of students on speech IEPs, which is also pretty low. And then we do have other learning disabilities, OHD, some other things. But this, we caution, Tammy and I caution, this could be perceived as a positive, and this could also be perceived as a Are we missing kids? Are we catching kids? Because every school should have students in federal setting 1, 2, and 3. And so this is something when that's what I was gonna say. When the state audits us, these are things that we're gonna keep an eye on and things that Tammy and I will look at throughout the year. Parents report feeling included in that's the wrong one. Parents largely agree that IEPs consider cultural and linguistic appropriateness. So if we have students whose first language is not English, for example, that's taken into consideration. We're not giving kids IEPs simply because their English skills are below grade level. General education teachers also believe that students with disabilities are having equitable access to resources, which could be, the resource could be curriculum, it could be time in the classroom. The next category was budget and resource allocation. According to the audit, our special education funding per student is comparable to similar districts, if not higher than. So we are probably spending a little more money per student than we might need to. And the cost that we are spending on students is mostly in people power. We have quite a lot of adults in our special education program working with students. Our fiscal policies align with compliance requirements. Those are things like we are spending appropriately. We can only use sped funds on certain things. We are, Tammy, can you think of another example of fiscal policies aligning?
Yeah, we have a conflict of interest procedure in place, which you're required to have, ensuring that there is indeed a special ed purpose for the purchases and tracking those things and coding them right in the systems.
What about also maintenance of effort?
Yep. And TCGIS has been maintaining effort. And then time and effort reporting, ensuring that we're tracking staff time, as Elizabeth pointed out. We do have a high number of staff, and making sure that we're tracking that time in special education too is another part of that they looked at.
For all of us parents out there,
Yep.
Can you guys just to remind everyone what maintenance of effort is and maintenance of time?
Yeah, so maintenance of effort is the amount that we spend on our program, and the state requires us to maintain that amount. As long as we keep the same amount of kids, we're not really allowed to dip below that or to go too high above. So it's just trying to remain even, Steven, on all of our services. Anything below or above would really trigger a closer look. I think that's the easiest way to explain it without having Director Stahl jump in and say a lot of words that.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was
Yeah.
looking for.
It's good when we get the news back that we've made maintenance of effort. It means we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. The next one is looking at staff and professional development. Was it last year, Tammy, that they changed the educational assistant requirements for training?
Yeah, this was the first year, I believe.
This was the
that
first year. Okay, it felt
yeah.
like 2 years ago. So checking to see whether our educational assistants are trained as well as they're supposed to be in the eyes of the state is one of those things. Special education staff, we were looking at things like tiered licenses. So our staff, paraprofessionals, and case managers are highly dedicated and collaborative. That came out in things like surveys and interviews. The special ed team has access to specialists and related services. I've been to a lot of meetings where charter schools have said, we still haven't found an occupational therapist, for example, meaning that any student on IEPs at their school, they are now not in compliance because the students aren't receiving the services. So we have all of the services that we need. We are contracting with others to provide. Our staffing levels align or possibly exceed ratios in comparison districts. Every special education teacher is also known as a case manager, and they get a caseload of students. And the average caseload in schools across the state is around in the 20s, somewhere around there. And the caseload at TCGIS is significantly lower. We have that intentionally placed. This year we had a lot of first-year teachers or teachers that were new to country. And so being able to work with less students would allow for catching up on all of the processes that go along with special education. But I want to keep that in mind that we are definitely at a pretty good student to caseload ratio. Tammy, would you add anything to that?
No, that was well said.
Thank you. Our paraprofessionals, like I said, are highly qualified. They have the training that is required by the state in accordance with that new statute. I think that might have been, that this is the last one, stakeholder input and satisfaction. As I mentioned, 15 parents responded for interviews and also filled out surveys. For the most part, students or parents are reporting positive experiences, especially with speech services. Leslie, our speech therapist, is well beloved. She's been with us as long as I've ever been here, and she has a pretty large caseload, and kids really love working with her. Interactions with special education staff are generally welcoming and respectful. Parents appreciate the collaboration between general and special education teachers. So after looking at some of those strengths, there were also recommended opportunities for growth in this audit. And Tammy looked at them and sort of compiled them into categories and prioritized them maybe over the next couple of years. We know there's a strategic plan coming, and so I think that's going to fit into some of this. But according to that, for the next school year, these are the priorities that TCJS would like to work on with Director Stahl and our special education team. It is clear after reading through that we need to develop a well-defined school-wide referral process. Sometimes this is called child find, how to determine when students are requiring special education services or not, and make sure that those processes and roles are clear, not just to the people that are working the evaluations, but also to the general education teachers, also to parents. I think parents want to know, how long do I need to wait in order for my kid to get help? Sometimes is the question. How low do they need to be? Like all those kinds of things need to probably be better communicated.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, this is a great time for questions.
Thank you. How many students come into our school as kindergartners or first year students that we already know have will be needing additional support services from special ed, or perhaps even have some IEP type plan already identified as in early education?
That's a very good question. And in every average kindergarten class, we have one, usually about one. It is not usual to come into kindergarten with an IEP. It is also, I would say, not usual to leave kindergarten with an IEP. It happens, and sometimes we do, but most likely, Tammy, you can jump in here, students are identified a little bit later, first grade, second grade, around that time. Sometimes kids will come in with IEPs for deaf, hard hearing, or other sort of like physical things. But the learning disabilities usually are not determined until the work becomes more difficult and literacy skills are starting.
So as you guys think about this plan, is there an intention to focus first or prioritize teachers in lower grades? Or, I mean, is there a different approach that's taken for younger students kind of as you're discovering maybe the need for these services versus like a third grader or a fourth grader? Or is it just depends on the kid?
Well, first of all, your question when you asked about how many kindergartners come in and how many are like, that's typical. We're not unusual there. Sometimes the language is a question, and we don't know if they're responding difficultly to the language, to the German, or if it's a learning disability. So that I think actually could push things out a little bit more. I saw Dr. Mecklenburg on the call. I know she's thinking about that probably right now. I hear her talk a little about that. I think that the process needs to be clear to all stakeholders. I don't think that there is a special group that needs more notification than others.
Thanks.
Yeah. Our plan is to implement stronger accountability measures, including routine service tracking, fidelity checks to ensure services align with student IEPs. This could be something like you get progress reports or you do conferences if you have a general education student. So having the same kind of progress report or having the same kind of communication. Tammy and I just talked about tracking sheets today and coming up with a way to make sure that everybody is trained on sort of the same kind of tracking sheet is important. We want to make sure that these SPED goals that we have are in our strategic planning process and adding the emergent concept to SPED. What came out was that gen ed teachers and SPED teachers alike are not sure where German fits into special education and where immersion fits into special education. And I think that's because the immersion concept is still, like I mentioned last year, we're on year 20 and we don't have an immersion concept. We're working on it. We have some of those things in place. And one of the things that we would need to nail down is for K2, we are going to be as inclusive as possible. We are gonna make sure that kids are in class and we're gonna build skill. Maybe 3 through 5, we will work on pulling out small group sessions, again, building skill, and then maybe 6, 8. There has to be a specific plan so people know where kids are going and nothing's a surprise. We can always strengthen professional development, probably more in immersion areas too. Onboarding, structured collaboration. We've had some international staff, and we know that coming in with an international perspective is tricky. Even coming from a different state is difficult because everything is so state specific. But I think we may have underestimated just how difficult some of those pieces are. You probably could appreciate that because to jump into the SPED world is really hard. It's really hard. And so I think we need to take a look at even SPED Forms, which is the software that our team uses to create their IEPs. It's been mentioned to me just in the last couple of weeks that, yeah, that needs more work. Teachers need more work with that kind of stuff.
When you say strengthen professional development, learning and all that, are you referring to SPED itself or
Yes.
full school about SPED?
SPED teachers themselves. Yeah. We do, I think, have an understanding of what the general education teachers need to know about SPED, but you're probably right that continued work on that is always great. Tammy, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say I agree with you. Primarily special ed will be the special ed staff would be the focus, but we did recognize a need for some training with all staff around things like how do I recognize when to refer to special education or what kinds of supports does the child need in gen ed? Because our goal is not to qualify kids in special ed, it's to provide them the right support in a general education environment. So just making sure that the gen ed population has information on special ed too and when to refer.
Yep, going back to this first priority here is to thinking again about the school-wide referral process.
Okay, and how, I was actually going to ask a question about that first bullet. How do you anticipate that would be implemented? And is that something that you would also intend to do next year, or is next year developing and then the year after implementing?
I think our goal is to have it clearly in place for the first, like maybe after the first 6 weeks of school, because there are screener cycles that are crucial to that. None of that happens until 6 weeks in, so we have a little bit of time. But this summer for Tammy and I will be really huge to figure out where the disconnect is and to try to tighten it up.
Okay, so most of that development here plan to do over the summer.
Yeah, one of the things we did already for that was Catherine Radicke has been attending the Child Find meetings, so pushing into the special education department, connecting the general ed and the special education teams to talk about the same kids is really important. We see the need to transition kids better. Just because a student starts on an IEP doesn't mean that like they should lose full contact with their interventionist. Those people should be chatting. Those people should be saying, here's where we left off. Here's what we see as a need, instead of just, okay, great. You got them now. We're going to go back to the pool. Just more connection. So we've already done a little bit of that work with Catherine, but there's a little bit more that needs to be done.
And Tammy's a contract, right?
Tammy is a contracted employee and she is very part-time. We have Tammy for 20 hours a month. And right now, it's very clear to me, Tammy, that it's not enough Tammy time. Sorry. Well, that's my next point, is that Tammy doesn't have more capacity for us. She has other schools that she works with. And so there are other options, and we're looking at sort of a different idea of what we can do to get that sort of that level of support.
Does that 20 hours a week or month continue over the summer months? So you do have that to work on this?
We have already, Tammy, did you see that I sent you that? We have already booked time in July.
I did see that, and I am going over my 20 hours almost every month. So, yeah, it's, we definitely need to start talking about a different model, and Elizabeth and I have some plans around that too.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That was going to be my next and
Yeah.
last comment. I promise I'll give somebody else a chance. And it's probably not a conversation we can have tonight, but resources, like if you have everything you need, and maybe that can be, or is you're planning on that being a part of that, developing the school-wide like referral process, like if you have the resources you need to implement these things.
Got it. Let me think about that and I'll let you know. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe a visit out to Marshall, Minnesota, so I can go to Tammy's. Would be great. Tammy, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about what our plan is. Are you okay with that?
Can I ask one more question
Yeah.
about the
For sure.
first bullet point? Are there like models or best practices or something like that that schools adopt in the child find process?
Yes.
Okay. And are we basing it seems like that could be a way to help lessen the lift.
We do not need to recreate this wheel.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are things that we're already pulling in
Yeah.
resources that are.
Yeah. And the reason I think our system is kind of where it is today is, like I said, I've been here for 5 years. For the first 3 years, there was a different director every year running the SPED program. There were different assistant directors. One assistant director left in the middle of the year, another one left, and then there was, it's been complicated.
Inconsistency.
We brought Andrew in to be like the consistent face, to be here at TCJS, and he can't do this himself. It's a really big lift. So that's why we brought Tanya Humble in just recently. I don't remember, Tammy, when Tanya started, but just kind of like pushing up her sleeves and getting in to try to do some of these things. And one of her biggest focuses the last couple of weeks has been the child find process and the referral process. Has a couple of other key things that she's working on. She's working on her students in the federal Setting 3 program, which we've never had before here at TCJS. So we had to build that from the ground up last year, and we've had to tweak some things today. So it is really clear to me that we need an assistant SPED director, and we plan on posting for that. Kim and Tammy and I have worked on the job description, and I would prefer this person to be full-time. I do not have a preference for whether it is a contracted person or a TCJS employee, but I have a very strong preference for it being in person. That is crucial for me. I'm not super interested in a online assistant director.
That makes sense.
How does ADSYS fit into this?
ADSYS fits in as it is one of the chain links of that child find process. It's the trade-off. We work with kids in ADSYS to see if that level of intervention is what is needed. And then if we're not seeing progress after so much time, then we move to a special education evaluation. But we have to show that we've done a certain level of intervention, or we've given certain things time to take, that teachers are doing certain things before we can really jump to a SPED evaluation. So that's part of the problem, is that we have such a great ADSYS program, I think probably better than other schools. And so we have kids that are responding really well to those interventions. And then these two teams, they're ships in the night. We just need more time with them together. Tammy, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, that was a really good question. And I like how you stated that. I would just note that the reviewers who did the audit, I don't remember if they put it in the report, Elizabeth, or if they just mentioned it to us, but you do have a really strong ADSIS program. And that could be partly why your federal setting number is lower, or your federal setting one number is lower too, because we just have a really strong intervention team at TCGIS, and it's commendable the work they're doing.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. That was part of the conversation. I don't know if it was in the audit though. Because that part wasn't specifically looked at. But it came up at Child Find. And then the last thing here, I think, is the feedback loop of stakeholder feedback, just establishing clear response timelines, structured feedback loop, communication strategies to strengthen engagement with families and staff. We do have SEAC, which is the Special Education Association. I don't know what the A stands for.
Advisory.
Thank you, Advisory Council. That meets quarterly. It's not attended very well, and I think we can really boost some of that. So those are our special education priorities for the next year. Are there any questions? Well, we've got Tammy here. Or questions for me? That's the next slide, Kevin, is just the question slide. There you go.
These
Good.
I was gonna say, did these findings kind of align with what you were expecting, or was there anything that was slightly surprising, or things that helped bring clarity to maybe where the struggle was felt, but maybe not, you couldn't totally pinpoint?
I wish I could see Tammy's face right now. I can't see it. Yeah, there it is. That's exactly what I thought you were. We were not surprised. We were pretty sure that we had our finger on it. It felt really good to have an outside eye come in though and say, yeah, we think it's this. This is a pain point number one. This is pain point number two. But the audit also really clearly provided support and opportunities. So no matter what, it was totally worth it. I think what another good thing, Tammy, was that it was really great to see the list of strengths that our team does have.
That's my next question.
Very tight team, works really hard together. And one thing that the audit didn't show, but that we feel is friction between the special education teachers and the gen ed teachers. And instead of having that friction, your kids, my kids, these kids, those kids, that kind of thing, we really need to work together. They're all of our kids. And so that isn't as easy to fix. There isn't necessarily a spot on the audit that talks about culture. But I believe that when all of those other processes are cleaner and well thought out, that friction is going to naturally go away. I would be lying if I said, go ahead, Tammy.
I was just going to say, I think the other thing that it confirmed for us, special ed in a immersion environment is tricky. There's not a lot of models that we can go out and look at to say, well, how do you do this in an immersion world, a language immersion? And the auditor has some experience with that. She worked in a language immersion school, and she's the director of special ed. You're my first school with language immersion, so that's not a strength area for me. So I think, looking forward at some of the strategic planning that you're going to do, it might be good to consider bringing her into some of those discussions as well, so that we keep that special ed piece at the forefront as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Her name is Ellen Grossman.
Great advice.
Am I remembering correctly that this was like a self-implemented audit on our SPED?
This was not required. This was our idea. We've seen some bumps in the SPED road this year. It was hard to staff this year, as every school is having a hard time staffing with special educators. And yeah, so we were trying to figure out what it is that we could do, and this was one of the things.
It sounds like it was very impactful. Tammy,
Super fruitful.
Is this type of like self-audit or self-requested audit something that's common with other schools you work with?
Yeah, I would say it's more common in the traditional bigger districts that I worked with. I don't see it as much in charter schools, although this was timely because next year Twin Cities German Immersion will be monitored by the Department of Education, both for fiscal monitoring and then your program or your how we work with students. And so there again, there was no real surprises to either Elizabeth or I. It kind of confirms where they're at, and we feel pretty good about going into an MDE audit next year. But I would say, you know, the bigger schools tend to do this more often than smaller schools do, and it's mainly to do with resources. So I think it was a great investment for your school, and I think that your strategic planning that you're doing, this is going to fit nicely with that as well.
Important to note that the audit comes out of the special education budget. I knew that was your next question.
Yep.
And also just to confirm, Tammy, the MDE audit that's happening next year is part of the regular audit cycle that all schools go through with MDE, correct?
Yes, MDE took a little bit of a hiatus during COVID and they didn't monitor schools. And so I think it's been about 5 years since a school has gone through a full review. And so last year and this year, I was aware that you were coming up to be due. So we started making some corrections and reviewing things anyhow. So it's not because you've done anything wrong, they're just MDE's back on track.
And how often is the normal cadence for the MDE audits?
Yeah, great question. So every 5 years is a full review, and then every year there's bits and pieces that they do. So, for example, this year, they are pulling some, they're asking for submit this IEP along with these invoices so that we can confirm you coded everything right. Or they might randomly select a child file to review. And I say they because they put the burden of the work on me. So I do it and then they check to make sure I did it right. But
Okay.
there's annual stuff that occurs, and then every 5 years is a full review.
And would you recommend this again? What you just went through in a certain number of years, maybe like in line with the end of our strategic plan? So we have it
Yeah,
again for the next strategic plan, and we could put that in as a milestone.
I think it's always good to get an unbiased outside view of what's going on. And I wouldn't do it every year, but I think, you know, a strategic plan is a 3 to 5 year plan. So kind of keeping it in line with that. And again, you're aligned real nicely in special ed anyhow for your full review with MDE. So if you kind of kept that same cadence, that would seem to make sense to me.
Great, thank you.
Perfect.
So, congratulations on the good timing. It worked out nicely. So, congratulations, good job. I had a few questions. The first one is, how does a good special ed intervention manifest?
How does a good special education intervention manifest? Meaning, how do we intervene with a student? Like, how do we know?
What does it look like to the student? Or not to the student, but in what does it look like in terms of its effect on the student? And
So-
what do we look for to say, yep, this was a good intervention?
Okay, so there are interventions that are written in the IEPs to help with whatever skill gap or whatever perhaps disorder the student has. Are those the interventions that you mean? Or do you mean the term larger, intervening with a student who is struggling?
I think maybe a combination of the two, because in terms of understanding
Sure.
what a specific plan
Sure.
does or how it affects a student.
Sure. Well, the goal of special education is to be able to allow students to experience the curriculum and the school on the same level as the other students. So we talk about equity versus equality. And if you've seen that thing where there's 3 kids looking over a fence, and special education is that soapbox that the kid stands on to see the same level as the other kids. So it's that lift, it's that boost. So whatever it's doing, we've got interventions that allow kids to participate in field trips, that allow kids to participate in sports, providing maybe another person in order to allow a student to successfully navigate through History Day, helping with executive functioning skills, making a list, things that the standard teacher isn't doing. It also can be things like having the teachers wear the speaker things for kids that are deaf, hard hearing. That's an intervention as well. So when students can access the curriculum and get out of the curriculum as much as they can, that's a successful intervention.
So, yeah, thanks for that. And so I was trying to, in the first few slides, there are data that show that on average, our special ed students do better at reading, for example, than comparable schools. So 2 questions for that. Number one is, are the different degrees of special ed students, like, do you normalize?
Yeah.
And number two, is that, so I saw that, but are there other outcomes that are also measured to say, okay,
How do we know if they're performing well?
Yeah, or if our approach is working well?
For sure. Tammy, I don't know if you have data that's ready off the top of your head, but there are different things that students can receive accommodations for. And a lot of the ones at our school are in, I would guess, in speech, in autism spectrum disorder, in ADHD, things like that, that might not necessarily impede learning. Do you know those percentages offhand?
I don't know the percentages offhand, but an accommodation doesn't change the what. It just changes the how of the learning. So what I mean by that is if the standard is to understand how to use verbs in a sentence, an accommodation doesn't change the standard. It just helps them access the standard. A modification changes the what they're learning. So if all students were to do 10 math problems, a modification would say this special ed student only has to do 2. So there's a difference between accommodations and modifications. Am I answering the question, Elizabeth?
You answered my question, but I don't think we've answered Director Tesfaiosis's. And I think so the answer to the question you're talking about is what are the other markers that we use to show if our special education program is helping kids be successful. And so I think we look at kids who their scores on the DSD-1. We look at grades. We look at the other MCA scores. We look at our screener scores. We look at every IEP has certain markers throughout it, and they have to meet goals. And so we look at whether students are meeting their goals or not. We have students that graduate out of special education. So that's a marker that shows we've had a couple of kids graduate out this year. And we see graduation. What do you call that, Tammy? Exiting.
Special ed services.
Yeah. We see kids exiting SPED probably between 5th and 8th grade. We also see it in the 8th graders that we have that are on IEPs. They'll probably be on IEPs until the end, and whether their transition to high school is, successful or not.
So if I can jump in here quick. So some of the markers, for example, if a student has issues with reading, has reading difficulties, dyslexia, something like that, then one of the markers that is in the IEP would say, okay, student is able to read X amount of words per minute with a 70% accuracy or 80% accuracy. And as the student makes progress in how accurate they read, those percentages get bumped up, essentially.
Sure, and it's just, so I don't know if the audit looked at those. Maybe it's just what the audit.
The success of the students.
And then the other one is, so when the survey is sent to parents, is it to all, all?
It was to all students, it was to all parents of students that receive special education services. Is
Okay.
that, yeah,
And if, okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
yeah. Not all of them filled it out. Some of them have more than one student. Yeah. We only have about 50 plus families.
Okay. I have learned from this audit, so I mean,
That's the goal.
yeah,
That's the
seems-
goal. Tammy and I will meet with the SPED department to go through some more fine details with them. And Andrew has looked at the audit in its entirety. The only three people that have are Tammy, Andrew, and I. There's some pretty data sensitive information there, so we're doing some high level summaries for people. But we'll continue to look back to it through the course of the next couple of years. Thank you for joining us, Tammy. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being
Yep.
here, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Yep, you too. Thanks.
All right. Any last questions? Perfect. Then I will call us into recess for the next 15 minutes. We will reconvene at 7:55. How about?
We're
We're
good.
recording? All right, it is 7:55 and we'll call this meeting of the Cincinnati German Immersion School Board back to order. And our next item on our agenda is the director's report, which embedded within that is the TCGIS athletics report. So we're going to skip ahead and do that first because athletic director Tabish is here to present and we'll let him get on with his night after his presentation.
Bedtime.
Before you start, I just want to say that I have told people openly, and I'll say it here again, I'm fairly certain that TCGIS has the best athletic director in the list league. Chris goes above and beyond. The kids swarming the table, the parents swarming the table last night at the Welcome to Middle School event that we had really spoke volumes. They are so excited to be in middle school to participate in our program. So thank you for everything you do.
Agreed.
So I'm going to keep this brief as I try to all the time. And if you've got questions, let me know, or at the end is fine. A couple of things that I wanted to go over were registrations, the budget, the goals that we've reached this past year, and goals that I, as well as admin, have for the upcoming school year. Number of registrations, to keep in mind, these are not number of students in the programs because some students will sign up for multiple sports even during the same season. But you can at least compare it over the past 4 years since I took over. And we do, I'll say more about the fourth grade sport situation down there later, but that was added this year. But even if you took that off, we still went up in registrations if you ignore the 24 that were just added this spring. Some sports are, flattening out and not necessarily growing a whole lot more. I think at this point, a lot of it is those who are in sports want to be in sports, and those who are not in it are not necessarily interested. So there's another piece coming.
There's another piece coming.
But I'm saving that for another slide.
Great.
What's
Now to the
IT?
budget.
Sorry, what's IT?
Indoor track. Yeah. So cross country, soccer, math team, indoor track, Nordic skiing, basketball, outdoor track, volleyball, summer track, and fourth grade sports sampler.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. For the budget, you can see up there right now, we've got like 3,600 in athletics. I have to put a nice asterisk next to that because I'm sure you're aware of like the past couple of years when I've come and it looks like, oh, we've had a very nice healthy budget of like $18,000. The reason why this looks so much lower than it has in the past. And actually, if you look at soccer, cross country, math, and summer track, all those are in the negative. Indoor track is a different situation. But for the 4 that were highlighted, it's because we did registrations in May last spring. And so therefore all that money was actually last fiscal year. And so in an effort to try to actually bring in those funds in the same fiscal year that we're going to spend them, that is the reason why we're moving registration from May to July 1st through the 15th for this upcoming school year and the upcoming fiscal year. If we were to have had that money from the registrations for those 4 sports from May that we could actually use this fiscal year, that would have been about 30 grand. So that's what you have on the right-hand side, the 35,000. That's with the registration fees from last May. What's on the left is assuming that we did not get any money from those registrations. And that's why they're in the negative, because we got no revenue from them. That's all in last fiscal year. However, again, next fiscal year, we are going to do registrations in July. So that money will be used and will be available. And therefore, next year, for next fiscal year, I would assume it will be something more like 20 grand at this time next year. Any questions about that? Because I know that could be confusing.
Is there any concern about moving the registration to July to have a negative impact while people are on summer break?
So I'll give the whole background.
Okay.
When I first started, and I started just as cross country and track and everything, I was the first coach to move registration into May because I knew that parents were actually paying attention to emails and everything at that time. And that's the way it had been for, up until last year. And it worked quite well. I have received a couple of emails saying that they are gone all summer long and not going to be paying attention to their emails. So there are some parents who are proactively getting involved in it. I don't necessarily think it's going to make a huge impact.
Okay.
Because I have already started getting the word out to sport athletic families. It's been on the TCGIS athletic social media, and I will continue to push it out as we head towards that time.
I think the last run brief that we have for the year, it's either the last Thursday or the second to last Thursday in June. So that's pretty close to that date. That'll be a really important touch point.
Yeah. I
set your calendars, people.
Yeah. I think as we're getting the word out, I think it'll be all right. And same thing for 4th grade. Once we get back, I'll talk about the sport sampler. I'm already starting to get emails from families that would likely have interested students in sports. So I could probably reach out to them directly via email ahead of time.
Is there a reason to not separate the registration and when you take payment?
It is possible. The issue is that a lot of times when we separate them, people will put their name into something, but without having paid for it, there's just a mismatch. And it's a lot of then work on my part to go and chase someone down. As someone who runs the VaultSafe program, those two are separate. And so it can be sometimes weeks or even months for me to chase some people down. And so I really enjoy the fact of having them together, either through Infinite Campus or back when we had Popsicle. Either which way, it was all together. Doesn't mean that we have to do it this way. It's more the work on me than it is anything.
I think we have good data on the number of people, the number of students that sign up for sports. So this will be an important year. And if we see a really, big turn down, then we'll have to readjust.
Yeah.
Would there be any reason we couldn't then kind of reopen registration closer to school?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for example, for 7-8 soccer, we've had to do that the past 2 years just because we didn't have enough players to even field a team. So if we need to, absolutely.
Mhm.
That being said, especially for 5-6 soccer, make sure that you get your registration in, or
Fills
math
up
team,
fast.
it fills up.
Mhm.
And when it's full, then it's full. We really can't do a whole lot more about that.
Mhm.
For comparison's sake, Central High School does their athletic registration in August, maybe even like the 15th, pretty late. Is there any reason that you chose July over August?
For me, it's just getting my ducks in a row. And so 2 pieces, that and the list league really does enjoy having that information by the end of July. I start getting emails from them in early July about it, about knowing how many teams we're going to have. The issue with them versus, like, say, Central has a soccer field that they can use. List league has to reserve fields. So they need to know how many teams each school is going to have, so that they can reserve those fields.
Makes sense.
Good. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
We could also, maybe there's a way to have people put in a credit card when they do registration and not run them until July 1st or something. If it
Yeah.
becomes an issue,
Yeah,
I'm happy to work with you
fine
on
too.
figuring out a solution.
Yep, that's fine too.
Or I should say Ed will be.
Yeah, I mean, but regarding the funding or the revenue itself, I don't think it's a huge difference. I think that same amount of money is coming in. It's just for this fiscal year, it's going to look a lot lower. And I think we still have a few bills to pay for outdoor track and volleyball this spring, but that number is not going to change a lot. So even without having like that 30-ish grand from registrations, we're still not, I don't foresee us going negative even with this situation for this year. All right. So the goals reached. We added a 4th grade sports sampler. This is a Wednesday program. There are 2 sessions, 5 weeks each, in which 4th graders were allowed to get to know the coaches, the programs that we offer. Nordic skiing was not a part of it just because of the weather and the equipment situation, but getting them aware of what we are offering in middle school already. And it seems to be a lot of fun, great success. I've done a couple of sessions myself. And the nice part is we don't have to necessarily go out and find new coaches and new people to do this. It's the coaches that we already have who are able to take on a Wednesday for each session, for example, and do volleyball or basketball. The leaf raking fundraiser, we brought in around $3,000 this past fall, and worked out really well. I'm anticipating doing it again this year. The biggest issue that we ran into is that there are more neighbors out there that want to get their leaves raked than we can actually do. So it would be great if, like, maybe Capstone would be interested in, and we would divvy up who goes to which homes or another fundraiser for that matter. But I think from the neighbors, from their feedback that I got, it's been super positive and they are definitely wanting us to come back. So the word will spread, and it would be great to get more people out there.
Is that the first year you did that?
It's the first year. Yeah.
That's a really good fundraiser. It was really, really fun also.
It was really good. There was only one neighbor that put us at only like good. Everybody else was very good in the satisfaction. So, and I did see on the Como Park Neighbors Facebook page that some were asking, "Oh, when are they coming around again?" And it was like we had already done our second time, so I was like, "That's it for the year."
Also, only you would have a satisfaction survey on a grade school fundraiser. Greatly,
I know. I was like,
in any case, we did.
Need to know where we're making.
Yeah.
And can you remind me, was it like community pot of money for athletics, or was it per team? It was like just it all went in the general athletic. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. I couldn't remember.
I did talk to a couple of the coaches afterwards, and it's couple of the coaches did a lot of pushing
Mhm.
and getting their athletes out there, even out of season.
Hmm.
And they were hoping that we could divvy it up based on the kids who go
Hmm.
and say like, okay, if you've got 20 volleyball players, then that percentage would go to volleyball. Or
Mhm.
I haven't said anything more than that, but
Mhm.
I can see that, especially given the goals that I have up. There's a couple of things that are a little bit pricier
Mhm.
that I would like to purchase in the next year. And some of this fundraising could go to that, especially if we get a lot of those athletes out there.
That's the way I do fundraising with my students, is whoever shows up gets.
So the
a
percentage
cut.
of students
Yeah.
that come from volleyball get this.
And then I wish
percentage, yeah.
Capstone did it that way, but they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and if say someone does volleyball and basketball and soccer, like they could
Mm.
choose, say, which of the ones they want their money to go to.
Mhm.
That being said, I mean, you saw it, aside from indoor track, everything else is running a positive.
Mhm.
So, and sorry, I did not mention why indoor track was running a slight negative because USA Track and Field raised their meet fees and we have to pay for each kid individually at those meets. That's not we pay $200 and we bring as many as we want.
Mm.
So just the way those registrations are done, that's different.
Mhm.
That's the only reason why that one's on a slight negative.
Do you feel like the rates that we do charge are enough to cover ref fees, coaching fees?
Yes. I mean, sorry, could you go back one more time to the budget? Like because we had all those kids for the registrations for soccer, cross country, math, and so on. If you look to the right, that's where we would be standing, $35,000 if we had those registrations from last May. So yes, I do think
Is that revenue?
that I don't know the wordage in math terms.
So that's a surplus?
That's what we would have
That
currently
would
right
be
now
your-
in our bucket.
Sure.
Even after, but not after you pay coaches and things like that.
That's what we
That's your
have.
profit.
That's right now. Yes.
Surplus. Is
Yes,
that not-
that would be the positive right now. If
Straight cash.
if those registrations had happened in July, that's what we would be sitting at right now. So yeah, I do think it's fine. And yes, I mean, $707 for indoor track is negative, but it's clearly outweighed.
Mhm.
Anyway, beyond that, installing the bleachers seems to be a real hit. It's another one of those, if you build it, they will come. There are more and more people at basketball and volleyball games than I've ever seen before.
And for all the other functions that this community
Oh,
has.
great.
That's true.
That we
That's true.
can
It's
sit
there
in
for other
on.
things too.
Yeah.
There are beautiful banners in the gym that are now up. And I've been working quite a bit on making sure that the social media and the athletics TV up in the hallway are up to date. And middle schoolers really seem to enjoy seeing themselves and their friends on the
That's
TV
awesome.
when they walk by. And
Parents enjoy it too.
I told Chris that I don't remember which tour it was, but it was either a new families night or a tour for new families coming in. They came into the gym and saw the banners and commented something like, wow, this school must have a really amazing athletic program.
And to them, you said, we do.
We do. And math program,
mhm,
because one of them is the math banner.
they're math leads.
The math lead.
Perfect.
And then the last one is for future goals. I anticipate we have actually designs to add like murals to the gym. They're like a year old now. So they are here. We just are waiting for the funding. And obviously we can't make it happen this year because of the financial situation. But hopefully this next fiscal year, I would like to increase coaches' pay, head coaches in particular. But waiting on the CBA, how that all falls out. The coaches' pay has been at $900 for both assistants and head coaches since
Before me.
Chad Prater was here and he started the whole athletics program. So it has never changed. So that would be really nice to be able to update that. math team and Nordic ski uniforms would be really nice. And this is where I'd like to shout out then Kirsten Partenheimer. She's really been pushing a lot to get her athletes out there to make this possible to get uniforms for her team. Her team does need specific uniforms because they have to be able to, I don't know, to wear it in the super cold, but also get the sweat off of you. So it can't just be wearing a heavy coat. And so that's why we can't really just go out and buy anything. And lastly, working on a competitive dance team. You might have seen it in the run brief. We are still looking potentially for an individual who can help out. We've got 2 people who are very promising, but we are still looking for one more person. So if you know somebody or are interested yourself, just let me know.
Are there other competitive dance teams in our
This is
league?
one of the individuals who reached out to me is going to help me figure all of that out and seems very knowledgeable and definitely way more than I am. That's one of the things I don't know anything about it. But we've had this situation before. I mean, Sam Graff has taken it off with math team. Kirsten Partenheimer took it with Nordic skiing. Like if we get one of those individuals who really know that scene and can pull it together, then that can really work.
Chris and I met, I don't know when this idea happened, but we were trying to brainstorm what we could add as another sport. We don't have a football field. We don't have wrestling mats. So we were trying to think about what we could do that would also reach maybe a different audience too. And I think this was a good idea. I feel really strong. The 4th graders were super excited last night about it. And we feel like we can find some performance spots for them too in our athletic program as it is. So I'm pretty excited.
You know, a lot of dance teams in gyms.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's the end of my presentation. Any questions about anything that was discussed? Yeah.
So with all the teams that we have, how many home games do we have in the gym throughout the year? And or I believe I also heard that other teams come here and rent our gym for their home games because we have a nice gym. So how often is our gym used for games where parents are attending?
So I can only speak to our kids competing. I can't speak to, because I believe it's the Blackhawks that come into. I am not a part of any of the renting out of the gym for other groups, so I don't know. But for basketball and volleyball, those are the 2 sports that use the gym regularly for home games. And I know 7-8 volleyball and 7-8 basketball is pretty much in there every week for 3 hours with home games.
A lot of other schools don't have near the facilities that we do.
Yeah.
Or the capability of doing that's something else.
Yeah. 5th and 6th grade, it seems that there are other facilities. So it's maybe every other week during those seasons that they are here playing. Otherwise they're at Yinghua or Nova Classical or wherever else. Yeah, that seems to vary. The math team was down there, I think, twice this year holding a math meet with, I don't know, 3 or 4 other schools. But that's about it. No, otherwise, those are the only 3 sports that are on there.
Can I throw a complete curveball?
It might be a swing and a miss, though.
Yeah, maybe add something to future goals. I've been thinking a lot about enrollment and how strong our athletics program is. It gets talked about a lot at all the events and everything I go to. And I love your sashes with the pins. But what if we thought about doing like a letter jacket or something like that kids can wear outside or like wear all the time? Just, it's kind of another point of pride that they can have, and it gets us, recognition when kid wears it to the mall or whatever, you know?
It's definitely worth thinking about.
And that's, you know, something the parents can buy their kids, so it's not necessarily an expense
Yeah,
outside of the patches you have to give away or whatever.
Yeah.
You might have to change that.
yeah. Um,
So if you could do a survey.
yeah, I think that's the thing that jumps in right away is that kids from 5th grade to 7th grade and 8th grade grow so much.
Mhm.
And I mean, when I got my letter jacket, I was a 17, 18-year-old, and growth wasn't this way, it was this way. So it's just I think my
Yeah.
number one concern is that purchasing it would be like,
Yeah. You're buying 2 or 3 of them.
yeah,
It's exactly the discussion we had when we were talking about the Nordic
uniform.
uniforms too. Like it'd be great to have those kids buy those, they just get to keep them, but then next year they're gonna need a different size, so.
And those uniforms are like $150 each. Like they're pricey.
Does the school own the uniforms or does the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that's the reason why I've pushed for that. In high school, I'd be less concerned about it because kids tend not to grow as much. At that point.
Is a huge jump.
But yeah, 5th through 8th grade. I mean, I've got kids who in 5th grade are wearing youth small and then they're adult medium by 8th grade. Yeah. But I mean, it's worth a try. I mean, we could definitely look at
Yeah.
it.
And it doesn't have to be a classic letter jacket either.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
you know,
it could be
like,
something like a little bit less.
Mhm.
Yeah.
just something that they could, you know, get patches
Mhm.
on as they
That's
do
nice.
things.
Yeah. Why not?
I see Berlin's sash sitting in a room all the time, and it's the only time anybody ever sees it is when she goes and gets another pin.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
She'll wear it for graduation with pride.
True. Yeah. And I agree. That's the downside to that. Yep.
Thank you. No,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
Yeah. No worries.
a
Fantastic.
great and informative presentation.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Alrighty. I think that brings us back to
Me.
slide 1 of the director's.
Yeah, great.
Report.
Let's go through this guy. Back to how about slide 2? We'll start with some financial indicators. Great. Happy to report that the DSCR, to jump down to the blue box, is at 1.00. We made some moves. Kelly actually found an error, something with benefits, and she found $25,000 that she had incorrectly placed somewhere else. That was really helpful. And we made a couple other moves, so we are right at that 1.00. 80 days cash on hand. Our current enrollment is still at 556. It's kind of hard to move that average daily membership at this point. We had a visit today from the Denver Language Institute, I think is her name. They're a charter school in Denver that teaches Chinese and Spanish. And she told me in Colorado, after January, if you gain a new student after January, you do not gain funding for them. That's horrible. So I really, I'm appreciative of our 8.65 because ours is prorated here in Minnesota. So it's hard to move it at this point. We still are working with 558 as our budget. And until that 558 moves, we can stay there. Fund balance is at 29.3%. Couple of staffing updates. We have a new educational assistant. Timothy Singleton is coming back to us. He had been with us previously. We had one resignation, a special ed teacher, Zach Porball. And then Kinder Club activity leaders. There's a huge list, and the asterisks are pretty cool. They are TCGIS grads. And actually Landon Sanchez is too. You should get an asterisk. And so we used to have a problem with staffing Kinder Club. Doing really good now. So yay. Benefits updates and renewal. It's that time of year. We were scheduled for a benefit enrollment. Because we are a school of a certain size, we have certain requirements that we have to go out to bid. So our open enrollment is scheduled for May 27th through June 6th. Kim has a meeting scheduled for June 3rd. The meeting is always videoed for staff. Then that open enrollment starts. We use a platform called Ease, and for all the teachers that are listening out there, that was purchased by Employee Navigator. So change will happen. We'll be using a different platform, which is kind of a bummer. So we'll have to get used to that. Further is our FSA card or a health savings account. They were purchased by Health Equity. So we've got that official transition date coming up. And I've been here 5 years. I think we've had 4 different ones of these. I was really excited that Further was back-to-back years, so I'm super bummed to see them go. Our employees can expect to, I said teachers, I mean employees can expect to get information on that soon. Just a shout out to Kim Hackett for keeping this so tight. She does a really great job on this. This is an area where her expertise outweighs mine 100 to 1. This is where she came here with this experience, and we're really lucky to have her. I struggle with my insurance as an adult. Oh, these are the requirements. So every 2 years, we're supposed to go out to bid. This year, other bids from different agencies ranged from 35% more to 148%. And we had to follow the procurement policy by going out to bid. For example, like, I can't remember what one of the bigger ones in town, Medica or one of those, like just couldn't even compete with what we have right now. We were expecting a 9.9% premium, but it'll actually only have a 6.8% impact on the schools portion. So when we look at the fiscal year 26 budget, I think that we're going to be able to adjust it. We're meeting with Kelly and we're going to be able to move it down, which is really good. Dental is going up 3%, no change to life, no change to any of the other offerings. But our health premiums did go up. We've had a couple of pretty big things in our policies. So that always impacts overall. We're staying with our current carrier. That'll make everybody happy. Additional operation updates, that bus contract got signed. Kim negotiated down to a 1% increase over the 7 that we thought we were expecting. We moved to a 3-year contract instead of a 2 to earn that percent increase. And then the following year we'll go to a 3% instead of 4 for the following 2 years. So we'll get there to 7%, but it's a slow climb. Bank transfer, this is actually a little bit outdated. We sent our final documents. We are on a little bit of a pause. I think more to come on the bank transfer later. Richard and I have a couple of meetings with Bremer. Now that we're so close to switching, we are being wooed by Bremer. And we're pausing to listen. We're pausing to listen. So we were a good client. They don't want to lose us. This is a great number, $235.90 of closed-bin donations. And the used book sale brought in $1,200. Was that looked to Richard for the closed-bin or for the bank?
Well, for the bank.
Yeah.
They're all of a sudden real appreciative of our.
They're all of a sudden. Actually, some things changed. Last year, we can talk about later, but there are some things that changed. Yeah.
You can give your update on the financial.
It's for next month. We're a little bit ahead of.
Okay,
my story's ahead.
Like emails today.
It was like today.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Like today, breaking news.
Yeah, late breaking news. Enrollment's at 556. Next slide, please. 25-26 enrollment, I don't believe has changed since the last time I saw the board. For the rest of the community, we're expecting 573 is the number that we've got here. We know that attrition is around 5%. So on the next slide, slide 10, you'll see in green that we've taken sort of the average of these 2 yellow columns in the middle, goldenrod columns in the middle. And we believe that staffing the fiscal year 26 school year at about 555 makes a lot of sense. So that's what our budget will be run at. Recruitment, retainment, and outreach events. We know that our enrollment number is heavily tied to our budget. And so everybody in the district, stakeholders need to realize that our job is all recruitment, retainment, and outreach. And so these are the things we've had recently. We had a really successful 6th through 8th grade coffee with the director last Friday. where we talked about Valtze, we talked about capstone, we talked about assessments, we talked about transitioning to Central. It was attended by about 20 parents and some people that I hadn't seen in other settings, so we're reaching others. And Tarek Alkatut said to me yesterday, "This is really great." So that's pretty cool. Our welcome to middle school last night was in person. It was an amazing event. There were very few families not there. We weren't quite sure, but they were all there. Jens was there. It was great. That event is about getting kids in the building, getting parents introduced to certain things just to ease all of that fear about going into middle school. And there was lots of time in between tours and tabling for those families to connect. And here's the secret thing that happened that I knew would. There are families there like me or like Director Smaka or like you that have older kids. And then they get to talk to those families who have an incoming fifth grader and they get to say, "It's gonna be okay." And then they believe you because you're not me. And then everybody starts to feel better because I can tell them all kinds of stuff. I believe it. But when parents can tell parents, it just is a different layer. So I know that there was a lot of rest assured last night. My middle school is exciting. Cafe Klatch 5 to 8 to 10. Oh, that's the grandparents and family loved ones event. Paige is working really hard to, so success last year. We're looking forward to that this year. New family welcome night. Nicole Crushell is working really hard on. That is coming up as well. I think this slide is maybe better. If you look over on the right, we've got the D10 pickup and party. If you're interested in helping out with that, reach out to Paige. Another new family play date. And then the Minsauk Youth Pride is an activity in our Como neighborhood here. Deutsche Tage, where kids will volunteer there for capstone. And then we've begun to work on the 20th anniversary. It's in the run brief. If you're interested in helping us with a task, let us know. All right, switching to academic updates. I think the next slide is the athletics overview, so you can go ahead to slide 15 and the third quarter pulse survey results. We had 55 participants. This time was focused on academic success along with student belonging. We wanted to pair that data that the students had given us alongside the parent data just to see where that lay. We threw out some questions to gauge some German language proficiency, and we looked at the parent data alongside the student belonging data. So here's a high-level summary on our strengths. Overall, 75% of our families were very or somewhat satisfied with overall academics, 69% satisfaction with German language, 89% feel their child has a trusted adult at TCJS, which aligned for the most part with what the students said. 87% receive the support they believe their child needs for students who struggle. And TCJS is providing the right amount of social opportunities for connection, which I thought was a good one.
Curious.
Yeah.
That last question, is that specifically geared towards students?
I don't remember how the question was phrased. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it was parent perspective on students, I think. Yeah.
Curious if we asked parents for parents.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. We're working in the right direction. I think we know that there needs to be more. Yeah. Here are some high-level summary opportunities. 20% felt that their child was not receiving enough challenge. So at the curriculum advisory committee, which meets next week. Tuesday. One of the questions that we ask is kind of GT focused. I think we've been able to say that immersion in German is our challenge, and it's just not the case anymore. We really need to take a look at what we need to do to challenge our students. And so Esther Noyne had some ideas. We're bringing that to that committee to solve, and that's something that I'm going to recommend we put on our strategic plan. Many families were unable to answer the German language question due to not being able to judge where their kid was at. And so one of the things we've got in mind, let me see, is maybe that on the next one. Yeah, that's actually the next slide. And 20% felt their child sometimes feels that they belong. Sometimes is an interesting word. So the next slide talks about kind kind of the takeaways of what my team thought we should be looking at. Increasing opportunities for parent involvement and being in school. I think we're working on that. Last night, Welcome to School is in person for the first time in 5 years. Assessing middle school communication between parents and teachers and systematizing is a goal for fall of 25. Further exploring the student belonging data and creating action plans. Catherine Radicke is currently working on that. She pushed into 7th grade, which you might remember was the grade that had sort of the lowest scores, and is reaching out to teachers to work on that. We want to explore more G&T and academic challenge. You know, I reached out to Brett Wedlin and went to talk about academic rigor. And so I think unearthing the difference between academic rigor and academic challenge is a really important part. We want to explore ways to tighten communication around homework. Our parents don't think our kids have enough. Our students probably disagree. I think it's really more about parents don't know what their kids are doing. And so if we increase the communication maybe around that, maybe we can all agree.
Can I give a quick suggestion?
Yeah,
Because I'm hearing feedback from Adriana of what she wished.
sure.
Have you thought about doing a alum survey, or have you done an alum survey?
When I met with the Toucan group,
Did you miss that last time?
I remember. Okay. Yeah.
the alumni group from Central,
Yeah.
led by Sophia Yamaniab, she said some of the same things.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That they would like more homework in 8th grade
Yeah.
to be ready
I
for
heard
9th grades.
Essay crafting and that type of thing. And so
Yeah.
that would be really valuable feedback for.
Essay
Seventh and
crafting is
8th grade.
actually a 9th grade standard, and that's why we don't do it here.
Hmm.
But I bet
She
when they
claims everyone else did it in middle school.
okay.
Not
Yeah, we
the
talked
German immersion kids.
we talked about paragraph writing and essays at the 6th to 8th grade
Yeah.
copy thing, and 8th grade, the standard is to be able to write a fully developed 8 to 10 sentence paragraph with a thesis statement, supporting details, concluding sentence, etc. We do the process paper in History Day, which is a multi-paragraph paragraph, but I don't disagree.
Yeah.
We should have more writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Our reading scores are great. So let's take a look at writing. So the other one about the parents not being able to assess whether their students were doing well or not. We think, I just talked to Katrin Gilhop about this yesterday. We think that bringing parents into the building to talk more about what those IV1, IV2, DSD1, like what does all that mean? What is that pathway? What does it mean when I pass that or don't pass that? What is the DSD2 in Central? Like just creating some education. I think there's probably education that can happen here at school with our teachers as well. It's kind of a specialized jargon. So we're going to work on that.
Can I jump in really quick? Because at the mission alignment meeting earlier this week, we did talk about, it was the presentation from the German Immersion Task Force. And this was a little bit of some of the things that we talked about was how do we help parents better understand where their child should be progressing in German and what kind of the expectation is. And so there's a lot of great, I thought, conversation around different ways that we can help parents in that journey so that they do feel really confident that their kids are making progress and that it's appropriate progress. And these are the things that we're looking for at each grade.
And also if there isn't appropriate progress.
And if there isn't appropriate
Right.
progress. So,
Right.
So
Yeah.
a lot of good conversation about that.
What is G&T?
Gifted and talented. Yeah. Gifted and talented. The state gives us, I think it's $2 per student for gifted and talented. So we can figure out how to spend our $1,200. Questions about the 3rd quarter pulse survey? Other than G&T? Great. The next slides are the SPED audit. So let's fast forward to 29. We'll just do a real quick share out on the 3 parts of our mission. Whole child should be the next one, Kevin. Yeah. Our parents sending students to Germany in 3 weeks have concerns around vaping and the vaping that happens in Germany. So we thought it very important to include our vaping education, which is a Minnesota required standard It's a statute, actually. So that is set. Our eighth graders will get that before Germany. Might as well give that a shot. I also encourage all families to talk to their kids about vaping. You might think that they're too young, and I will tell you they're not. You could go home, all of you right now. Tell them that vaping is
Is
bad.
that a thing in Germany?
It's a thing here too.
Well, I
It's
know,
not
but it's,
here at our school.
ah,
And so I think sometimes we forget, but yeah, it is a thing in Germany. Student belonging survey for K4 has gone out, and teachers are working through that. And we celebrated Neurodiversity Month through April. We did something really cool, and we had some of our staff members who identify as neurodiverse go in and talk to students about like how their brain works maybe a little bit differently, and how they both see that as a strength and like what they do to challenge and support the value that we have here. Yeah. Innovative education. We had Minnesota History Day, took students to state.
Sunday.
It's this Sunday. It's this Sunday. Thank you. Students visited the Minnesota History Center and the planetarium. So we're still working on creating those anchoring field trips. The ELA, English Language Arts Curriculum Review, continues, and it's finishing up tomorrow. We're going to make a decision on what we're going to do. Yeah. We're prepping for that curriculum advisory committee, which meets 2 times a year. We're preparing for the next year's interns. If you'd like to host an intern, email Claudia Mueller. And we're continuing with our intern workshops. Nina Maslowski has done an awesome job taking over the intern program this year, filling some big shoes. Round 2 of teacher evaluation completed, and the last set of MCAs will be, actually this is old, so we did those. We're just doing makeups now. Our district assessment coordinator is Esther Noy, and our secondary assessment coordinator, the DAC and the SAC, are Esther and Catherine, and they are working really hard to make sure that we're compliant. And I'm proud of this fact because I think for the first time we really have this covered. We talk about like what would happen if Esther won the lottery. Well, Catherine would get to do it. So I think that's a great step for TCGIS. German immersion. We are preparing 63 students to leave on our GAP exchange. The adult chaperones, in case you didn't know, are Frau Binkowski, Frau Noy, me, Profe, Thomas Vico, who you may remember had to go back to Austria, is actually flying in from Vienna and meeting us.
Are you serious?
She's
That's
continuing
awesome.
to chaperone. He's so excited, and so are the kids. Yeah. He was on the docket to go with us.
Oh.
Yeah, and we're actually saving money because the flight from Vienna is cheaper. So
We do it every year.
yeah,
Just in 2 years when my kid's on it.
yeah, for sure. Kim Micklin, who you may know from the special ed department, and then of course led by Claudia. So 15 days, 3 schools, 9 school days, 2 weekends with families. We're super excited. Our 6th graders are preparing for Valtse that same week. Super busy week in the middle school. And that is a huge list of adult chaperones. Most of those names are interns. And then we do have a couple of teachers and then some community members too. It takes a real village to get that thing up and running. And we are always looking for male chaperones. So if you are interested in accompanying kids to Concordia Language Villages next May, reach out to Chris Tabish.
Is that Aberhart related to you?
Different spelling.
Oh, is it?
Kevin has gone. Kevin went the year I went, so he's done his duty. I think that's the last slide. Any questions about what's going on?
It's a great update.
We're never bored.
No, it's a busy spring. Excellent. Thank you. All right, I think that brings us to our special edition of a special edition agenda item, which is I wanted to have a discussion with this group about board applications. The deadline for applications was Wednesday. We currently have 1 application and we have 4 open positions. So we are netting 3 open positions. So I'd like this group to take a few minutes to brainstorm ideas on outreach tactics, to help people understand the importance of serving on the board. Perhaps dispel some preconceived ideas. And encourage folks that maybe fall outside of our natural social networks, to make sure that we're reaching the broader community with our messages of join us. So we do have Richard, Jens, and I happened to be able to connect yesterday just really briefly, and Jens is working on an FAQ one-pager that we are hoping to be able to share a little bit more broadly. As I shared with this group just prior to our meeting today, we're also going to be doing some outreach in conjunction with our Raise Craze campaign, sharing an act of kindness, but also including some information on board involvement and Monday's car line, and as parents and families are walking into school on Monday morning. But would certainly welcome feedback from this group about creative ways that we can get the word out to our community. So just looking to have a discussion. I'll open it up to everybody to weigh in.
I think
Director Albers looks
initially off the bat, my first thought is to use and implement more into the social media realm using Page. Not only in the vein of, hey, applications, because I felt like that was something that I missed this round, was taking her up on all of the ways that she uses, for example, Instagram and Facebook to really, this is happening. When we sent out that constant contact, sorry, my voice is, the children got me today.
Say that every day.
I do. This time they got the voice instead of the energy level. But and now I'm off.
social media, constant contact.
Oh, yeah. The constant contact you said mentioned a lot of, or you had a few reach out about that. And so I think just not just putting it in the room brief is a huge thing. And so that's already something on my mind. But then also on top of that, I think it'd be cool to do little spotlights on us. I'm hoping to not only just on the board members, but eventually be cool to see spotlights on staff or spotlights on certain volunteers,
alumni,
like all the things that I see Paige doing in general are really cool. And I think the more you can spotlight things like that, and specifically talking about us, the more you can spotlight our thing. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to our website and clicking on board of directors and then scrolling through our presentation, and it's pretty and I like it and it's cool to look at, and it's fun to remember like how we all got here and what our connections are and our backgrounds and things like that. But I don't know how many people outside of us are doing that. And so bringing it front is something that initially I've been thinking about, as I've struggled in the last week specifically to get those reconfirmations of will you run, will you not?
I wonder too if it's almost like a mini testimonial. What I like working, my favorite thing about being on the board, one unexpected positive thing about being on the board, if there's like maybe a set of some of those types of questions that kind of get at what might be intriguing to someone.
Do you feel like you have a sense of the barriers that are in the way of people? Like, is it understanding what's going on there? Is it a time commitment thing? Is it?
I think it's by and large, it's time commitment.
Everybody that I've talked to is just not able to give the time, whether that's from their own perspective of what they initially think before they talk to us on a deeper level, or whether that's, I mean, I keep continuing to mention how much time on average I think a new board member would spend, a non-officer position would spend per month on a Zoom or Google Meet meeting for a committee, and then our committee of the whole and our board meetings. And I'm still getting a lot of no's, I can't give that kind of time. And maybe I'm just not hitting the right people, or we're not hitting the right group.
I think I've also heard that, for people that maybe do have the time, perhaps also feeling like they don't have the skill set, which my response to them has been, if you are willing to learn, willing to listen, willing to ask questions, be curious, then you have the skill set to be a part of this group. We're not gonna, you know, we have professional accountants, we have legal counsel, we have MISBA, we have Charter Connect, we have a director, you know, so trying to reassure folks that you don't have to be you know, someone who has years of experience as a school administrator.
Does anybody have any sense of the amount of, like, the expected time commitment is similar to other charter school boards like us?
I do.
That's a.
I ask everybody I run into, and we're high.
What is that? What do you hear? That's interesting. What do you hear from other
Time
people?
commitment's the big issue.
Yeah. I talked to the Nova Classical, and we have a lot more committees than they do. They have the required committees, and
Which would be
no more. Governance, finance,
yeah.
this one, executive, that's about it. So that's one way. And then Caring Cleansing's new school, their board meetings are 2 hours every other month.
Oh,
So that's another fact. And Brett's are also really short. And I'll own this one thing. He gave me that suggestion of sending things out on Friday, so I don't have to have so much. And I think I can certainly condense mine. So I'm welcome the feedback. I know you like hearing, but I will condense because I talk a lot.
okay. I think we have this year been getting out earlier, and I think
Tonight's is late, but it
tonight's is late, but
Yeah.
I agree. I think I told someone that we had a 3-hour board meeting, and they went, this is a non-school person. I went, whoa, what do you talk about for 3 hours? So I think that that's a very fair point and something we could work on.
Is that something too, though? Like, I'm wondering how that works in a school, like with communication. Cause I feel like a lot of the reasons we talk about things in this forum is to communicate it outward. And so is that obviously necessary versus, written brief? It's not necessarily a question that we can say it's the answer to the question, but more just thinking along the lines of, can we shorten things because we put most of it into the written brief, or?
I think there's the things that have to be public,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And then there's probably some things that we do that are in an effort to communicate what's happening at our school. And so perhaps there's different vehicles that we can use to eliminate some of that, and maybe these just become a little bit more business.
I think we're instilling confidence. That's what we've done
Yep.
this year. I tried to be really transparent, just to talk about all the things. And I think as we instill confidence, we can pull back on some of those things. That would be the goal.
This is the first year of in a while as far as
Yeah.
EVs too.
So that's one thing I was going to say, and I think something that we have to think about, especially if there is like an attitude or an idea of a substantial time commitment, especially if it's more than other schools, is we did just come off of hiring. I've been on the board for 6 years, and I've hired three
EDs.
executive directors.
I've been on for 3 and I've hired.
Yes.
We're also
So-
3.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's been some.
So as a
big-
part of that, like, not only is that a big process to hire an executive director and to write a strategic plan and all of those things, it also shows that we as a board have been a little more hands-on
Mhm.
over the last 4 or 5 years than normal, because we needed to. Because even if we had great people come in like Karen, they still needed to spend time with us to understand the school's vision and everything like that. So there's a lot more involvement necessary for those things. Now, with Elizabeth being amazing and continuing, I think, like you referenced, we're already seeing a natural
Mhm.
kind of ease of how much time commitment. And I'm seeing it in even my like finance committee. Like we used to have a hard time getting out by 8:30, starting at 6:30. Now we're done at 7:30, 7:45, just because, you know, the longevity is there with people. There's no more of those like first asked questions and stuff outside of like the first meeting or two of the year. So I think we're seeing a natural progression of that. And I think we need to communicate that to our
Mhm.
that we are slowly going to a more governance instead of hands-on board.
Were you gonna say something?
I was also curious if the committee of the whole process type thing, is that common or? Okay,
I haven't encountered anyone that does,
It-
that does something like that, yeah.
there's a part of that I like.
Mhm.
But it also feels like a artifact of a much more hands-on. We need to understand where everything's at. And it takes 2 meetings a month for us to get through everything.
Mhm.
So,
Some of it can feel redundant though.
I
Right.
feel that with my report.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do think there's benefit to kind of helping us all be
Mhm.
prepped. But
this is feeling like a potential for the board retreat and or the
Mhm.
board
Mhm.
line item in the strategic.
Absolutely. I also think one thing that I've been thinking about is more definition of officer roles and or committee chairs.
Yeah.
With a more strategic report out. So that we all can not have to go to, I don't have to go to finance because I know Ed and Richard have it and they're gonna report out this very like not robust, but like thorough report out and maybe standardizing some of those report outs at this meeting so that people don't feel like Elizabeth doesn't have to go to all those meetings or I think there's some efficiencies and elimination of redundancies that can happen.
And going along with the minimizing committees, I am full supportive of getting a fundraising person hired at some point. Will pay for itself.
And I also think that once you join the board and you're here in these meetings, like I'm not looking at the clock. And
No,
maybe
that's
like us having so much fun is a detriment because the meetings run longer because we like to talk and
We don't argue.
Mhm. So, I mean, which brings me to one of the things that Jens and Kirsten and I talked about on Tuesday, was doing like the FAQ that Jens is gonna do on paper, but I would like to try to do one in person, like just kind of like an invite. Anybody that's ever thought about, being on the board or just wants to learn more of what the board does. Kind of FAQ in that way, and we can get up and talk about it and just, and also like have a mingle aspect to it to where we can just talk to people, but and it doesn't have to be people that would necessarily want to join the board, just to learn more about what we do. And then we can talk about how much fun it is. We can talk about how much I've learned over this last 6 years and how much I appreciate getting to interact with amazing people on a semi-professional level that I would never get to outside of this.
Yeah, maybe it's like a coffee with the director, but coffee with the board type thing.
Yeah.
Great idea.
A coffee, a board, learn about board.
We had a really hard time finding 8th grade parents to sit on the graduation committee. And so we just talked about a smaller group of people got together and made a giant list of things and we're sending that out and people are jumping in and biting off chunks that they can. And I think that moving to tighter committees and more of task forces that can be, you can swoop in and swoop out. You're not making larger commitments. They can jump in to have help with one fundraiser a year. Instead of the whole committee. I think that's an interesting option too. I was also going to mention that I remember there was a board member in the past who worked for a major corporation who allotted time for volunteering. I know Ben works for Wells Fargo and he also gets the same sort of allotment. So maybe reminding people that employers view board work as volunteerism and companies allow for a time to do that.
And professional
development. Yeah,
Really?
that's what I was just gonna say.
That's not for us.
No.
Sorry.
No, different professionals.
We still have to go to PC, sorry.
Some of us have to work on people skills.
And participation in meetings.
This is really funny.
Meaningful participation.
Meaningful participation.
None of it, is any of this helping, Emily? With the issues, well, if we don't have any.
I think it does. I think the hardest one is still going to be I'm not as concerned about I'm more concerned about finding teachers, and that is going to be the uphill battle forever. That is technically an appointment. I do have one up my sleeve that is quite heavily thinking about it. She wants to, I think, but I need to reconfirm. And I'd like to have a few more in the bank, just because I think it's important. Obviously, you never know with educators where they're gonna end up, where they're going, all those things. But the more we can entice or, at least get them thinking about it, I think that's a good thing. I know it's a lot. I know that I probably set some sort of bar on it. I know Chris set a bar on it when he was on here. Kim Kohanic set a bar when she was on here. Very eager to jump in and really push. And that doesn't necessarily have to be what you do. It can be. And I tell this is my thing that I tell a lot of people is when they ask about time commitments, I always say it doesn't feel like a time commitment if it's something you're passionate about. If you're passionate about finance, yeah, after a while you don't want to look at your screen anymore. But when you're working on a festival of cultures, I didn't mind that we met every other week for 2 months because it was fun. We got to talk about food trucks and, things that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise get involved in necessarily. And yet it's, you take your little bit, Roxanne took food trucks and this person took dancers, we all were reaching out to different people. So again, kind of just on the festival. of
Everybody
cultures.
does a little, nobody does a lot.
Exactly. But I think, it's harder to convince staff of that when they're already feeling the volunteerism to some degree. I think the benefit though is interacting with parents in a different way, community members in a different way, the administration in a different way.
Right.
You get a really different view on it. And yes, you have weird party hats on your head at all times, and you get to really feel a little wonky when you walk in and you're like discussing things that impact my boss or my colleagues or things like that. And I'm making those affirmations with you all, but at the same time, it's rewarding to know that there are parents. I truly know how you feel about things at school versus kind of sitting behind the email screen going, oh. And that's
for sure.
reinvigorating to also stay as a teacher. You feel the sense of community doing things like this, doing the big base,
Right.
going to games after. Like I do that with my colleagues, but it's nice to do that with people that aren't my colleagues.
Well, and for teachers too, I would say that it is an opportunity for professional development outside of, I would make the argument it absolutely is because
It is. You don't get the credits for it.
well, no, but I mean, we don't get the credits for it either. But I do think it's an opportunity to grow those professional skills, even in my own right? Like I think we all take something from experiences like this at this point in our lives, and you add it to your toolkit of whether whether it's realized in your actual job or another future volunteer community volunteerism, or how you raise your kids, it plays into how you treat others, so I think there is that opportunity that we could highlight as well.
I think there's also, it's just something you can do very easily your entire life. And it's fun to realize, like, I never thought about it. I never thought I'd sit on a board of anything.
Right.
And now I'm thinking, oh, when I'm done here, I'd love to give back to the places that have impacted me in other ways too. So getting, we hear about that from a lot of our community members too, about, they're currently sitting on the Black Men Teach board, or they're sitting on another charter school board. We'll talk to them in a year or two, and those types of things. And our potential list for members is ever growing, so.
Okay, so that brings me to I just want to take 5 minutes to identify at least 5 tactics that we would like to execute. So we have our scone handout, which is very grassroots and very, you know, feet moving down the sidewalk. We have a coffee with the board. Richard, would you mind taking the lead on finding a date
Yep,
for that?
I'm already
Yeah.
looking.
Perfect. Jens is working on a FAQ. He's got that.
Can we do the page thing?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Emily, would you mind connecting with Paige?
The board needs you.
I think we should,
Yep.
sorry, for coffee with the board, we should probably do something in the afternoon after school.
Okay. Or Friday mornings also tend to be fairly well
I
attended,
just
but
think
you're
people who
thinking.
work full time
Yep.
can never make those.
Mhm.
And most board things are after school.
What
Mm.
time
I mean,
after
You're
school?
looking for the target market.
Yeah.
I also thought about, may not be appropriate, brews with the board at Gabe's.
I think.
You're hilarious.
We can do it like the big base thing where that's not a part of it. Like we
Right.
come to the school FAQ for an
Yeah,
hour.
and then we could,
And then, you know, if whoever winds up at Gabe's to have one-on-one conversations afterwards, it just kind of happens.
or we're just on the patio, and if you'd like to
Mhm.
join us, we'll be, I don't know. We can have pop on the patio. I'm just thinking like a happy hour time might be more conducive to
Yes.
people's schedules.
Yes.
Whether
For
lemonade
sure.
or whatever, I don't really
Yeah,
care. I'm
lunch
just,
Stack might be cool.
yeah. And I was trying to like,
That was my first board get together, was at Black Stack.
that was a fun one.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Speaking of fun times,
Were you
we
there?
could really show them the 1-2.
It was after an event here and
It was after Festival of Cultures, I think.
I just joined, yeah, I think so.
Maybe.
Okay, so I think that gets us to 4.
Yep, social media.
Social media. Any final ideas?
I think, you know, maybe all of us having access to
Yeah.
the nomination stuff and doing it more year round.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about this? Whether it's June.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Think about it.
Do you want to share that?
Yeah.
With everyone, and then maybe if everyone could commit by next committee of the whole, having reviewed that list and getting in touch with Emily to let her know who you would be willing to reach out to
Because
in your networks.
I do think there's a lot of value in like directly asking
Yep,
someone. to say,
absolutely.
You could do something here.
Yeah,
we
the
need
shoulder
to
tap.
kind of-
Yep. And I think there has been a lot of it. There's just unfortunately been a lot. But you're right. I think a personal ask goes a long way, or a call.
I will say, like, everyone I reached out to was like, wow, thank you for thinking of me.
Mhm.
And that was like very much, and please get me thinking or get me, you know, I would be interested in future years. So I think it's just about when is that sweet spot for a lot of people, and I know it just really depends on family and job and
Yep.
the life things.
Yeah, for sure. And that's totally understandable. But hopefully somebody's right time. Because we,
Do you have the PDA day fully planned for 23rd?
No,
Maybe we add number 5. We add half an hour. I'll come in.
Mhm.
Anybody else that can, and kind of focus on teachers.
Mhm.
Like do that same type of FAQ thing, but
Mhm.
teacher specific.
we're doing a very self-directed PD day that day I'm out. And Catherine has.
So a lot of people won't be here.
No, I mean, like, there's a lot of space. We don't have like a speaker or any like PD coming in.
You just have cookies in the lobby and
Yeah, we can just bring in like coffee and
Yep.
a treat or something
For sure.
in the morning and chat with people. Okay, there we go. There's your 5.
perfect. Thanks, guys.
Good job.
All right. Excellent. Next on the agenda. Should have also asked Kevin. He could have been a special guest weighing in on this conversation. Let us know if you have any other.
Hey, you wanna run?
Yeah, you can.
You can come to that
can
coffee
be a
thing and
place
answer
pick.
questions.
Yeah, maybe you could be a special guest. Be the special guest.
Be there.
Okay, perfect.
All
right. I guess it-
2-3, report to the authorizer.
Q3, report to the authorizer. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had the chance to review that Q3 report. Thank you, Kevin, for putting it together. It was a big one. I feel like they all are.
Mm.
I did not see any changes or corrections.
Nor did I.
Okay. Danielle's feedback. Danielle Miller is our authorizer program manager at UST. She's come to a couple board meetings. She was very complimentary. I think I forwarded that feedback to everybody. So that was lovely and affirming. As part of that Q3 survey, we also did have to do our board self-assessment. Those slides have been shared in the board packet. With such a small group, we used to have 12 and now we have condensed to 9, which is great. The spread is a little, 2 people here, 3 people there, 4 people there. But by and large, we rated ourselves pretty consistently 4 or 5s across most of the areas that kind of those overarching categories: duty of obedience, duty of loyalty, et cetera, et cetera. I do think there's always continued work to do in some of the nitty-gritty knowledge pieces that we are expected to be aware of as board members in terms of different dates, different laws. Hopefully everyone knows that all of that can be accessed on our Google Drives for the school, or Emily has all of that information too as part of governance, the dates and things like that of laws. It's all part of your governance overview orientation. So just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. Any other thoughts or reflections on the board self-evaluation? Great. Hearing none, we'll then move on to committee reports and see if we can still keep to our 9:30 deadline. Prove ourselves that we can have shorter board meetings. So Lindsay, you want to kick us off with fundraising? I feel like it's a good time.
It is a good time. So we are at $6,790. I check it a few times a day.
It's kind of addicting.
It's very addicting to look at it. So just over $3,000 away from our goal. It was encouraging to see people starting to participate when it first launched. Just today, Kirsten and I met with Paige about giving out incentives to the kids. So we're hoping that once kids receive some cute little prizes, that'll encourage more kids to participate. And yeah, I think it's going pretty well. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think we certainly have. I think the latest number that I saw was we have about 80 kids participating.
80.
And I think if we could
246 acts of kindness, 228 emails sent out.
Yeah, I mean,
I will add that of the emails I sent out, all of the donations came from people that have never donated to the school in the past, which is what the whole point of this was. And I think that's great.
I think if we incorporated this a little bit earlier in the year and with a little bit more lead up, we kind of ran into a little bit of a scheduling crunch between conferences and spring break and trying to, coming off the heels of Mask and Ball and trying to be thoughtful about how it all squeezed in terms of a calendar. But I think if we did do some more proactive rollout, enthusiasm building, parents hopefully have seen how easy it is. It literally takes 5 minutes, not even, to fill it out. If we could double the number of kids, I think it would be an incredible opportunity for our school to really meet that annual goal. So I think we are closing in very quickly on our 85,000, which is encouraging because that falls right to the bottom line. So thank you for all your work on organizing that, Lindsay.
I know there are other products that are similar to Raise Craze, and Isabella was diving into some of the costs, and so I think I'd really be interested. Central uses one, interested in just looking at what other things are out there. But I feel like this idea of this, like the general, is pretty great. I would agree. My data shows that a lot of people donated that had not or would not in other instances.
Yep.
I will say from a staff perspective too, I understand that there's some back end accounting that is extra work, but in terms of like the publicity pieces around it, everything is pre-done for our
Yeah.
staff so that there is minimal work on that end and
I mean, you would even spit out a PDF like preloaded with our goal and everything. Like,
yeah, the QR codes are already done. You can text from your, I mean, yeah, so it's been a good first run. Obviously ways to improve going forward, but anything else on fundraising, Lindsay? All right,
no, that's what our main focus.
finance and facilities.
Not a lot of updates there outside of what Elizabeth included in her director's report. We did have an update on switching banks, but as Elizabeth also said, we're on pause and we'll have more information for the next finance meeting and then for the next board meeting. We also talked about what it looks like to refinance our bonds from 2013 to try to save us some money every year. We didn't love any of the scenarios that were presented. So we asked for a couple more. We just got those like yesterday. I looked through them, but I'm not really prepared to talk about them in any specific capacity. But we'll be looking at those 3 new scenarios at the next finance committee, and I'll have a more full-fledged presentation or like discussion with the group at our next board meeting. That's it for me, unless there's any questions.
Great. Committee of the whole, I think most of our time was largely spent on an initial review of the SPED audit, as well as some review on the communications that Minnesota schools received in regard to the federal administration's request for assurances that we were abiding by the 1964 Civil Rights Act law. So the board spent some time discussing that. Additionally, going through some of the survey questions planned for the strategic planning effort. We are in the process of finalizing those with Gail, and she has included additional questions on German immersion and immersion education for the board's request. So stay tuned for those final surveys. And then also, again, shared out the board review, had a little bit more in-depth review of those results. And then just prepping and planning for tonight's meeting. All right, governance.
Yeah. I will not talk about it. We just spent a good 20 minutes on. So I'll skip over non-com stuff. We have 2 policies up for approval tonight. The first one, however, needs to be technically read again tonight. So in that essence, I would say that if you can hop to 509, this, we could also emergency do it if we're trying to get out of here in time. I'm gonna reshare it with y'all so that you can see it. It should be in your email. 509 is the enrollment policy. We were informed, I think Elizabeth emailed me the day of governance to let me know that we had one thing that came back from MDE out of line.
The timing worked out really well. Danielle reached out and said that our policy was not in compliance with the current change. And the timing worked out to take it to governance the next day and to hopefully pass it here.
Yeah.
And then we'll stay in compliance.
Yeah, so.
Did you just share it again?
I don't see
did.
it.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
I shared
It's in the board packet,
I'm just gonna grab it from there.
or like the link is in the notes from the governance meeting on page 317.
This was the biggest board packet ever.
That's good. Um,
317, you say?
Yes.
Typing names. So basically, there's one part that got redone. It is in section. What is that? 4, 5? No.
Basically, we had to
17.
change, we had to define,
Sorry.
Primary employment.
primary employment, and we had it stated.
Oh.
We needed to add 480 hours is what we needed to add. So this was a direct quote, came from MDE to Danielle. Basically said, you're great, just change this to this.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the only change made. I just accidentally shared the other policy with all of you as well. That's the only thing. This policy was reviewed in 2023. It was
Yeah.
not on the docket to come back up this year, but with MDE saying, hey, you're out of compliance, it made its way back. So
So you're asking for approval?
I would say, as long as there's nothing else that we want to talk about with this one, I'd close it for the second read and then ask for approval on 509 and 401. Anything else we need to change on 509? All right. With that, then I would say I'm going to make a motion to approve policies 401, which is equal employment opportunity, and then 509, which is the enrollment policy. For standard enrollment, we do have 2 other types of enrollment policies, I believe. And so,
One second.
okay.
Discussion.
I sent 401 over to Kim Hackett, and she said that there was nothing that she saw in it. And Lori added gender identity and then familial status, but otherwise very short, sweet.
Those changes were because of the statute change.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so not really up for debate, but good to know.
All right. Hearing no further discussion, we'll make a motion to approve, or, oh,
You just need to vote.
we just need to vote. We already made the motion. All those in favor of approving policy 401, equal employment opportunity, and policy 509, enrollment, say aye.
I,
Opposed, say nay. All right, these are approved.
I can start for liaison updates. I have none. The next staff meeting will be in May before our next board meeting. So I will have an update then.
Right. Abner was not able to make it tonight. As parent liaison, I don't know if anyone else attended any parent council meetings or.
I can do a parent council update.
Okay.
Yeah, parent council, they're working on some communication that's gonna go out to the community that's talking about the changes that they've made. They've come up with a mission statement, which is really great. It's guiding their work. And they're working on finishing their charter, and the message is about bringing, like, their real focus is community. And so I met with Marie Parrish, who reached out. The parent council is really concerned about our international staff, our international families, in light of recent federal changes. And so they asked what they could do to help. And so we had a really good, deep conversation about what might, what they might be able to do. And so they've got some ideas, and mostly what they want to do is send a message of compassion and understanding. And that's what they've been up to.
Great. Sounds good. Administrative update, Elizabeth and I and Richard meet weekly on Tuesdays, where Jens is going to start joining us for those meetings. Just to kind of start to hand off the baton a little bit, and just become familiar with some of the things that we're just touching base on weekly. So I don't know that we've been spending a lot of time talking about the strategic planning efforts. So that has been the primary focus of our conversations the past couple weeks. So, no agenda report there. Anything you'd add, Elizabeth?
No.
Perfect. Any new business? I will say we will continue to send out additional doodle poll for a board retreat.
It's on my list.
Emily's on it. We'll figure something out. So thanks for everybody's flexibility. I know schedules are busy, so if anyone has any creative ideas that what might work for folks, feel free to let me or Emily know. But I do think I think it will be time well spent together to kind of talk about some of the things that we've just touched on tonight. So as we look ahead to the next year.
Is a weeknight out?
I don't think anything's out. I think, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think it's much beyond 9 o'clock. I don't know how great we all are at functioning past that time. So I'll speak for myself. I'm not that great.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
great.
Depends on if there's school or not.
All right. With no other new business, we will meet next on May 29th, 2025. And this meeting is adjourned at 9:24, 6 minutes to spare.
Nice job with the tight agenda.